The alarm screamed through the empty corridors of Heiyun Station. Kang Dae-ho looked up from his workbench, grease covering his hands and face. Another malfunction, he thought. The station's systems were always breaking down. That's what happened when corporations built things as cheaply as possible. He wiped his hands on his already dirty shirt and walked to the window. Outside, the mining planet Taeyang 7 glowed orange and red below the station. It was a beautiful sight, but Dae-ho barely noticed anymore. He had been living here for 3 years, alone in his workshop, fixing broken machines and forgotten equipment. The alarm changed pitch. This wasn't a normal malfunction. This was something else. Dae-ho pulled up the station's monitor. His eyes widened. A ship had crashed in the lower docking bay. The automated systems showed red warnings everywhere. The ship's design didn't match anything in the database. It wasn't human. It wasn't any of the common alien races that visited the station. He grabbed his tool belt and ran toward the docking bay. His boots echoed in the empty halls. Most of the station was automated now. Only a handful of people still lived here, and they kept to themselves. That's how Dae-ho liked it. Less people meant less problems. The docking bay doors were damaged. Smoke poured from the gaps. Dae-ho forced them open with a crowbar, coughing as the gray smoke filled his lungs. Inside, a small ship lay twisted and broken. Parts of it were still glowing hot. The metal looked strange, almost alive, with patterns that shifted in the light. He approached carefully. The cockpit was shattered. Through the broken glass, he saw movement. Someone was inside. Dae-ho climbed onto the wreckage, ignoring the heat that burned through his gloves. She was like nothing he had ever seen. At first, he thought she was human. She had the same basic shape: 2 arms, 2 legs, a face. But then, he noticed the scales. Silver and blue scales covered her arms and neck, catching the light like precious gems. Small horns grew from her temples, curved backward through her long black hair. Her eyes, when they flickered open for a moment, were golden with vertical pupils. She was dying. Dae-ho didn't need to be a doctor to see that. Her armor, a beautiful suit of metal and something else he couldn't identify, was broken in dozens of places. Strange energy leaked from the cracks, sparking and hissing. Her breathing was shallow and fast. The armor wasn't just armor, he realized. It was connected to her body. Tubes and wires ran from the metal into her skin. Without it working properly, she couldn't survive. Dae-ho made a decision. He didn't think about it. He just acted. That's what humans did. They helped first and asked questions later. He pulled her from the wreckage, carefully supporting her weight. She was heavier than she looked. The armor added extra mass. She didn't wake up, which was probably better. Moving her had to hurt. Getting her back to his workshop took 20 minutes. Dae-ho avoided the main corridors and used the maintenance tunnels. He didn't want station security asking questions. Something told him this woman was in danger. The way her ship had crashed, the damage patterns, it all looked like she had been attacked. His workshop was a mess, as always. Tools covered every surface. Half-finished projects sat in corners. The air smelled like metal and machine oil. Dae-ho cleared his main work table and laid her down gently. Under the bright lights, he got his first good look at the armor. It was incredible. The craftsmanship was beyond anything human engineers could make. The metal seemed to flow like liquid in some places, solid as diamond in others. But it was broken badly. Large cracks ran across the chest piece. The left arm was nearly severed. Energy leaked from every joint. He touched one of the cracks carefully. The metal was warm and seemed to pulse under his fingers. His universal translator beeped, trying to process the symbols carved into the armor's surface. It couldn't make sense of them. The language was too old, too complex. Dae-ho started working. He didn't have proper medical equipment, but he had tools. Lots of tools. And he had something else. something that made humans special in the galaxy. He had the ability to look at a problem and find a solution, even when everyone else said it was impossible. First, he stabilized the energy leaks. He used a welding torch to seal the smaller cracks, adjusting the temperature until the strange metal responded. It shouldn't have worked. Human welding techniques shouldn't affect alien materials. But Daeho didn't care about shouldn't. He only cared about what did work. The woman gasped when he sealed the chest piece. Her golden eyes opened wide, filled with pain and fear. She tried to sit up, tried to speak, but her voice came out as a harsh whisper in a language Daeho didn't know. Then, she saw him. Really saw him. And something like horror crossed her face. She raised one hand toward him. Blue energy sparked around her fingers. Daeho jumped back, but she collapsed before she could do whatever she was planning. Her eyes rolled back, and she fell unconscious again. "Yeah. You're welcome," Daeho muttered to himself. He was used to talking alone. 3 years of isolation did that to a person. He kept working through the night. The armor's left arm was the biggest problem. The internal mechanisms were crushed. Daeho had to cut away the damaged sections and fabricate new parts. He used human alloys, carbon composites that were strong and light. He didn't know if they would work with alien technology, but he had to try. As he worked, he noticed something. The armor wasn't just mechanical, it was biological too. Parts of it were alive, growing, and adapting. When he added the human materials, the armor seemed to accept them, integrating them into its structure. It was like the armor was hungry for the repairs, pulling the new metal into itself. By dawn, Daeho's eyes burned with exhaustion. His hands shook from too much coffee and not enough sleep. But the armor was stable. Energy flowed through it properly now. The cracks were sealed. The systems hummed with power. The woman was still unconscious, but her breathing had improved. The scales on her neck had changed from a dull gray to a healthy blue-silver. That seemed like a good sign. Daeho collapsed into his chair and stared at his work. What had he gotten himself into? This woman, whoever she was clearly important. Her ship, her armor, everything about her screamed royalty or military or something equally dangerous. He pulled the black box from her ship closer and plugged it into his computer. The data was encrypted and fragmentary, but he managed to recover some files. What he saw made his blood run cold. Battle footage. Dozens of ships attacking one small vessel. Explosions. Weapons fire. Bodies floating in space. The woman's ship fleeing, damaged, jumping through hyperspace with half her systems failing. She wasn't just running from someone. She was running from an army. Daeho heard footsteps in the corridor outside his workshop. Heavy boots. Multiple people. His hand moved to the plasma cutter on his belt. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was something. The footsteps passed by. False alarm. But Daeho's heart kept racing. He looked at the woman on his table, at the armor he had repaired with his own hands and human ingenuity. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea what trouble he had just invited into his life. But as he watched her sleep, her face peaceful now that the pain had faded, he knew he had made the right choice. Humans didn't leave people to die. Even alien people with scales and horns and armor that defied physics. That's what made humanity special in a galaxy full of ancient, powerful civilizations. They cared. They helped. They never gave up. "These not a feller. These not a feller." Daeho pulled a blanket over the woman and settled in to keep watch. Whatever came next, they would face it together, even if she didn't know it yet. 3 days passed before she woke up properly. Daeho spent that time working on the armor, making small improvements, and watching the woman sleep. He also kept one eye on the station's security feeds. Twice, unfamiliar ships had docked at Heyoon Station. Both times, armed figures had disembarked and asked questions about crashed vessels. Deho had wiped the docking bay records. As far as the station's computer knew, nothing had crashed there. Just another malfunction in a station full of malfunctions. On the third morning, he was adjusting the armor's power flow when her hand grabbed his wrist. Fast. Impossibly fast. Her golden eyes stared at him with sharp intelligence. "Who are you?" she asked. The universal translator finally kicked in, turning her words into Korean. "What have you done to my armor?" Note: Deho carefully didn't move. Her grip was strong enough to break his wrist. "My name is Kang Deho. I'm an engineer. Your ship crashed here 3 days ago. You were dying. I fixed your armor." She looked down at herself, at the repaired armor that now had visible human components mixed with the alien design. Her face went through several emotions: shock, anger, confusion. Finally, something that might have been reluctant acceptance. "You are human," she said, releasing his wrist. She sat up slowly, testing her body's responses. A human repaired Dravalian royal armor? Dravalian? Deho rubbed his wrist. "Never heard of them. And yeah, I repaired it. You're welcome. By the way," she stared at him like he had just said something incredibly stupid. "You do not know the Dravalian Empire. We have ruled the Eastern Spiral Arm for 10,000 years. We are the descendants of the first dragons. We are..." She stopped, looking around the messy workshop. "Where am I?" "Haeyun Station. It's a human mining outpost above Taeyang 7. You crashed in our docking bay." Deho pulled up a chair and sat down. If she wanted to kill him, she could, but his instincts said she wouldn't. "You were being chased. I pulled battle footage from your ship's black box. Want to tell me what that was about?" The woman's face hardened. "That is not your concern, human. It became my concern when I saved your life," Deho shot back. "And when those armed soldiers started searching the station for survivors from your crash, so either tell me what's going on, or get out of my workshop and deal with it yourself." She studied him for a long moment. Deho could see her thinking, calculating. Finally, she spoke. "My name is Yura. I am Crown Princess of the Dravalian Empire. I was carrying diplomatic documents to the Galactic Council when I was ambushed by Kethron forces. They killed my guards, destroyed my escort ships. I barely escaped." "Kethron?" Deho asked. "Another empire. They seek to prevent an alliance that would expose their crimes." Yura touched her armor carefully, running her fingers over the repairs. "The documents are encrypted in my armor's core systems. If I die, they die with me." "I mean, well, you're not dead," Deho said. "So, that's a start. But those Kethron soldiers are still looking for you. We need a plan." Yura laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "We? You think you can help against the Kethron sovereignty? They have armies, fleets, weapons that could destroy this entire station in seconds." "Yeah, probably," Deho agreed. "But they haven't found you yet. Because I hid you, and I wiped the records. And I'm pretty good at making things work when they shouldn't." He gestured at her armor. "Case in point." Yura looked at the armor again. Really looked at it. Deho had done more than just repair it. He had improved it. The energy flow was smoother. The response time was faster. The human materials he had integrated made it lighter without reducing strength. "This should not be possible," she said quietly. "Dravalian armor is crafted by master artisans over decades. Each piece is grown and shaped, with techniques perfected over millennia. Yet you, a human, improved it in 3 days with inferior materials and primitive tools." "Inferior?" Deho raised an eyebrow. "These primitive tools just saved your life, Princess." Yura's scales flushed a darker blue. "Anger or embarrassment Daeho couldn't tell. I did not mean. She stopped, took a breath. You are right. I apologize. My people have always believed we were superior to younger races. Clearly, we were wrong about some things. That admission seemed to cost her something. Daeho respected that. Admitting you were wrong was hard for anyone, but probably harder for someone who grew up as royalty. So what now? He asked. Now I must reach the Galactic Council. Present the evidence against the Kethrans. Prevent a war. Yura stood up, moving carefully. The armor responded to her movements perfectly, better than before, if Daeho was any judge. But I cannot do it from here. I need a ship. Your ship is scrap metal, Daeho said. But I have one. It's not fancy, but it flies. The Chionsa. She's docked in the abandoned section of the station. You would help me? Yura looked suspicious. Nothing, Daeho said simply. Well, maybe to not die when the Kethrans blow up the station looking for you. But mostly because it's the right thing to do. Yura stared at him like he was speaking a different language. The right thing? You risk your life, your home, your safety, for someone you do not know, for no reward, simply because it is right. Yeah, Daeho said. That's pretty much it. Is that weird for Dravalians? It is. Unusual, Yura admitted. Most species help others only when they gain something in return. Power. Resources. Alliances. But humans. She trailed off, thinking, humans are stubborn. Daeho finished. We don't like seeing people hurt. We don't like bullies. And we really don't like being told something is impossible. He grinned. Your armor was supposed to be impossible to repair with human technology. How'd that work out? For the first time, Yura smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. You are very confident for such a young species. We have to be. The galaxy keeps trying to kill us. Daeho stood up. Come on. We should move before. The workshop door exploded inward. 3 figures in heavy armor rushed in, weapons raised. Kethran soldiers. They must have traced the energy signature from Yura's armor. There! One of them shouted. The Dravalians survived. Everything happened fast. Yura moved like liquid lightning, grabbing Daeho and pulling him behind his workbench as plasma bolts seared through the air. She drew a weapon from her armor, a slim blade that hummed with energy. Stay down, she commanded. But Daeho wasn't the staying down type. He grabbed a welding torch and cranked it to maximum. When one of the soldiers came around the workbench, Daeho hit him with a face full of white-hot flame. The soldier screamed and fell back. Yura took advantage of the distraction. She moved between the other 2 soldiers like a dancer, her blade cutting through their armor with precise strikes. They dropped. Unconscious or dead. Daeho couldn't tell which. The soldier he had burned was getting up, reaching for his weapon. Daeho didn't think. He just grabbed the nearest heavy object, a magnetic clamp, and swung it hard. The soldier went down and stayed down. Silence filled the workshop. Daeho's hands were shaking. Yura looked at him with new respect. You fought, she said. Yeah, well, they were shooting at me, Daeho replied. His voice shook a little. Seemed rude. Yura laughed. A real laugh this time. You are insane. I like that. Great. Can we like it somewhere else? Because more of them are definitely coming. Daeho grabbed a bag and started throwing tools into it. Essential equipment. Things he couldn't replace. Yura helped, moving with efficient speed. Within 2 minutes, they were ready to go. Daeho took one last look at his workshop. 3 years of his life. His home. His sanctuary. All left behind. But when he looked at Yura, standing tall in her repaired armor, he didn't feel sad. He felt alive. For the first time in 3 years, he had a purpose beyond just surviving. The Chionsa is this way, he said, leading her toward the maintenance tunnels. Stay close. And try not to kill anyone unless you have to. Humans prefer to avoid murder when possible. Your species is very strange, Yura said, following him into the dark tunnels. You have no idea, Deho replied. Behind them, alarms began to sound throughout Hoyun Station. The Kethrans knew where they were now. The hunt was on. But Deho wasn't worried. He had faced impossible problems before. He had fixed things that shouldn't be fixable. He had saved a princess from a race he had never heard of. What was one more impossible situation? That's what humans did best. They made the impossible possible. And Deho was about to show the entire galaxy just how stubborn one human engineer could be. The maintenance tunnels of Hoyun Station were dark, cramped, and filled with pipes that hissed and dripped. Deho moved through them with practiced ease. He had explored every inch of this station during his 3 years here. Yura followed close behind, her armor's soft glow providing extra light. How much further? She asked. Another 10 minutes to the abandoned section, Deho replied, squeezing past a junction box. Then, 5 more to my ship. If we're lucky, the Kethrans won't find the tunnels for a while. Yura's sharp hearing picked up distant sounds. Boots on metal. Shouting voices. They are searching the station systematically. We do not have much time. Boot. Then we better move faster. They ran through the tunnels, ducking under low pipes and jumping over gaps in the floor. Deho's lungs burned. He wasn't a soldier or an athlete, just an engineer who spent too much time sitting at workbenches. But fear and adrenaline kept him moving. Yura barely seemed winded. Her species was clearly built for physical activity. She moved with grace that made Deho feel clumsy by comparison. But she never complained about his pace or left him behind. She stayed close, watching their backs. They emerged into the abandoned section of the station. This area had been shut down years ago when the mining operation downsized. Empty shops lined the corridors. Broken screens flickered with dead advertisements. Dust covered everything. Your ship is here? Yura looked around doubtfully. Best hiding place on the station, Deho said. Nobody comes here. Too depressing. The Chionsa sat in docking bay 17, covered with a tarp. Deho pulled it off, revealing a small cargo ship. It wasn't pretty. The hull was patched in a dozen places. The engines were mismatched. But Deho had built and rebuilt every system, personally. It was reliable, where it counted. This is your ship? Yura asked carefully. Don't judge. She flies. Deho hit the door control. Nothing happened. He hit it again. Still nothing. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. He pulled open the maintenance panel and looked inside. His worst fears were confirmed. Someone had sabotaged the power systems, cut wires, destroyed components. The ship was dead. We have a problem, he said. Yura looked over his shoulder at the ruined systems. Yes, but it'll take time. Hours, maybe longer. Deho pulled out his tools and started working. His hands moved automatically, assessing damage and planning repairs. We'll need parts too. I can scavenge from the station, but we do not have hours, Yura interrupted. She was looking at her armor's scanner. Kethran forces are moving through the main sections. They will reach this area within 40 minutes. Deho kept working, refusing to panic. Panic didn't fix problems. Then I'll work fast. You keep watch. Yura wanted to argue. He could see it in her face. But she also knew they had no choice. She moved to the docking bay entrance, her blade ready, watching the corridors beyond. Deho lost himself in the work. This was where he was comfortable, where everything made sense. Wires and circuits didn't lie. They didn't betray. They just worked or didn't work. And Deho always made them work. He pulled components from the walls, from other abandoned ships, from anywhere he could find them. The Chionsa's systems weren't standard. They were a mix of human and alien technology that Dae-ho had cobbled together over the years. That made them hard to sabotage completely. The attackers had damaged the obvious systems but missed the backups. 30 minutes passed. Dae-ho's shirt was soaked with sweat. His hands were bleeding from sharp edges and hot metal. But the ship was starting to respond. Lights flickered on. Systems hummed to life. They are close. Yura called from the entrance. 5 minutes. Perhaps less. Almost there, Dae-ho muttered. He bypassed the main power coupling and rerouted through the secondary systems. It was inefficient and dangerous, but it would work. It had to work. The engines coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. The sound was the most beautiful thing Dae-ho had ever heard. We're good. Yura ran back to the ship. As she did, Catherine's soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor. They saw her. Weapons came up. Yura threw something from her armor. A small sphere that landed between her and the soldiers. It exploded with blinding light and a wave of force that sent the Catherines flying backward. Go! She shouted, diving through the ship's door. Dae-ho was already in the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. The Cheonsa lifted off shakily. More Catherine soldiers poured into the docking bay. Plasma bolts hit the ship's shields, making them flare and spark. Shields at 30%. Dae-ho reported. We won't survive much more of this. Dae-ho reported. Dae-ho reported. Yura slid into the co-pilot seat. Then do not let them hit us. Dae-ho grinned despite the danger. He liked her attitude. He aimed the ship at the docking bay doors and fired the forward weapons. The old mining lasers weren't made for combat, but they cut through the doors well enough. The Cheonsa shot through the gap and into open space. Alarms screamed. 3 Catherine fighters were launching from Heyoon Station. Pursuing them. The Cheonsa was faster than she looked, but not faster than military fighters. They are locking weapons, Yura said, reading the sensors. Dae-ho pulled the ship into a dive toward Taeyong 7. The planet's gravity well would interfere with the fighters' targeting systems. At least, he hoped it would. Plasma bolts streaked past the ship. One hit the rear shields, nearly collapsing them. Dae-ho threw the Cheonsa into a spiral, using every trick he knew. The ship groaned and shook, but she held together. Can you shoot them? He asked Yura. Your weapons are designed for mining asteroids, not combat, she replied. But she was already targeting the nearest fighter. She fired. The mining laser hit the fighter's wing, shearing it off. The fighter spun out of control and fell toward the planet. Not bad for a mining laser, Dae-ho said. Not bad for a primitive ship, Yura countered, but she was smiling. They dove deeper into the atmosphere. The 2 remaining fighters followed. The Cheonsa's hull began to heat up. Warning lights flashed across the console. Dae-ho had an idea. A crazy idea. Hold on to something. What are you? He aimed the ship at the planet's surface, accelerating hard. The fighters followed, thinking he was trying to land. At the last second, Dae-ho fired the main engines at full power and pulled up sharply. The Cheonsa's shields screamed in protest. The hull glowed red-hot, but the fighters, going faster and less maneuverable, couldn't pull up in time. They hit the planet's surface in twin explosions. Dae-ho guided the smoking ship back into space. Alarms were going off everywhere. The shields were gone. The hull had cracks, but they were alive and free. Your flying is insane, Yura said. I prefer creative, Dae-ho replied. He punched in coordinates for the hyperspace jump. We need to get far away from here before more Catherines show up. Yura was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You saved my life. Again. Why do you keep doing that? Dae-ho thought about it while the ship's hyperspace drive charged. Because humans know what it's like to be the underdog. We know what it's like when nobody helps you and everyone expects you to fail. We don't do that to others. Even alien princesses we just met. Your species is very strange, Yura said softly. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. She looked at him with those golden eyes. In Dravalian culture, when someone saves your life 3 times, you owe them a life debt. Your fate becomes bound to theirs. 3 times? Daeho counted. The crash, the workshop, and just now. Yeah, I guess that's 3. So by my people's law, I am now bound to you. Yura continued. Where you go, I go. What you fight, I fight. Until the debt is repaid. Daeho wasn't sure how to feel about that. You don't owe me anything. I helped because I wanted to. That is why I owe you everything, Yura said. The hyperspace drive finished charging. Daeho pulled the lever, and the stars stretched into lines. The Chionsa jumped, leaving Heyoon Station and the Kethran forces far behind. In the quiet of hyperspace, surrounded by swirling colors and distorted light, Daeho and Yura sat together in the cockpit. Neither spoke for a while. They were both processing what had happened, how their lives had changed in just a few days. Where are we going? Yura finally asked. Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council's homeworld. Daeho pulled up a star chart. It'll take us 3 weeks to get there with the Chionsa's drives. Maybe less if I can soup up the engines. 3 weeks on this ship? Yura looked around the cramped cockpit. It's got sleeping quarters, small ones, and a food processor. And entertainment files. It's not luxury, but it's home. Daeho stood up and stretched. Come on, I'll show you around. The tour didn't take long. The Chionsa was a small ship. But Yura seemed impressed by how Daeho had used every centimeter of space efficiently. The sleeping quarters had 2 bunks, barely big enough for 1 person each. The common area had a table, some storage, and the food processor. I will take the lower bunk, Yura decided. Works for me. Daeho pulled out some ration packs. Hungry? It's not fancy food, but it's edible. They ate together, sharing the small table. Yura told him about the Dravalian Empire, about worlds with floating cities and crystal towers, about her ancestors who could transform into actual dragons, about an empire slowly falling into decline because they refused to change. Daeho told her about Earth, about humanity's near extinction when the sun started dying, about the desperate rush to colonize other worlds, about being the new kids in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations. Somewhere during the conversation, Daeho realized he was enjoying himself. Really, enjoying himself. He hadn't talked to someone like this in years. Yura was sharp, funny when she wanted to be, and interested in his stories, and she was beautiful. Daeho tried not to think about that. She was an alien princess. He was a human engineer. Nothing could happen between them. But when their hands accidentally touched while reaching for the same ration pack, they both froze. The moment stretched out. Neither pulled away. Daeho, Yura said quietly. Yeah? Thank you for everything, he smiled. You're welcome, princess. They sat together as the Chionsa flew through hyperspace. 2 unlikely companions, bound by fate and circumstance, heading toward a destination that would change everything. 2 weeks into the journey, everything went wrong. Daeho was in the engine room, making adjustments to improve their speed, when alarms started screaming. He ran to the cockpit where Yura was monitoring the sensors. What is it? He asked. Kethran ships. 4 of them. They found us. Yura's voice was calm, but her hands gripped the armrests tightly. They must have been tracking us somehow. Daeho pulled up the scanner data. She was right. 4 military vessels. Much larger and better armed than the Chionsa. They were closing fast. Can we outrun them? Yura asked. Not a chance. They're faster and we're already pushing the engines hard. Daeho's mind raced through options. Fight was suicide. Flight was impossible. That left only one choice. Where? We are in open space. Not for long. Daeho changed course, aiming for a nearby asteroid field. Asteroids will hide our signature. Maybe. They dove into the field with the Kethrin ships right behind them. Daeho flew the Cheonsa through the spinning rocks with reckless skill. Using every trick he knew, Yura watched in silent amazement as he threaded the ship through gaps that seemed impossibly small. But the Kethrin ships were good too. They stayed on their tail, firing weapons that shattered asteroids and sent debris flying everywhere. One large piece hit the Cheonsa's port side, tearing a hole in the hull. "Breach in Section 3, Yura reported, sealing it now. Daeho spotted a large asteroid with a cave-like opening. He aimed for it and pushed the engines to maximum. The Cheonsa shot into the cave, just as a plasma bolt exploded behind them. They flew deep into the asteroid, finally stopping in a large chamber. "Kill all power," Daeho ordered. "Everything except life support." The ship went dark and quiet. Through the cave opening, they could see the Kethrin ships searching the asteroid field. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the ships moved away, continuing their search elsewhere. "They think we were destroyed," Yura whispered, "or they're waiting for us to come out." Daeho ran diagnostics on the ship's systems. What he saw made his heart sink. "We've got bigger problems. That hit damaged the hyperspace drive, and we're leaking fuel. Even if we make it out of here, we can't reach Nexus Prime." Yura was quiet for a moment. "Then we have failed." "No." Daeho refused to accept that. "We just need to repair the ship." "With what?" "We have no parts. No facilities. We are trapped in an asteroid, with Kethrin forces hunting us." "Yeah, I know. It's bad." Daeho grinned, despite the situation. "But I've fixed worse, with less. Come on." Over the next 12 hours, Daeho performed miracles. He used pieces of the damaged hull to patch the hyperspace drive. He created new fuel lines from the ship's water recycling system. He rebuilt the navigation computer using parts from the food processor. Yura helped where she could, following his instructions exactly. She watched him work with growing respect. This human never gave up, never complained. He just kept finding solutions to impossible problems. "How did you learn to do this?" she asked, while he was rewiring the main power coupling. "Necessity. Humans don't have fancy technology like other species. We make do with what we have. We improvise." He wiped sweat from his face. "On Earth, there's a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. We've survived by being creative. Dravalians would call this chaos," Yura said. "We have strict protocols, proper procedures. This," she gestured at Daeho's wild tangle of wires and improvised components. "This should not work, but it will work. Watch." Daeho connected the final wire and restored power. The ship hummed to life. Not perfectly, but enough. "See? Chaos with a purpose." Yura laughed. "You are teaching me many things about humans, Daeho. Things I never expected to learn." "Like what?" "Like how strength does not always mean power. Sometimes, it means adaptation, survival, refusing to quit, even when logic says you should." She moved closer to him. "You are not what I expected humans to be." Daeho felt his heart beat faster. They were standing very close now. Yura's golden eyes reflected the ship's emergency lights. Her scales caught the glow, making her look like she was covered in stars. "What did you expect?" he asked quietly. "Primitive creatures. Simple. Limited." Yura reached out and touched his face gently. Her hand was warm. "But you are none of those things. You are brilliant, brave, kind. You are kind." The ship's sensors beeped. The Kethrin ships were returning, scanning the asteroids more carefully this time. Daeho and Yura jumped apart. The moment was gone, replaced by urgent danger. "They are using deep scanners now," Yura reported. "They will find us within minutes." Daeho made a decision. "Then, we don't hide. We run. The ship cannot survive a fight. I know. That's why we're not fighting. Deho started the engines. They coughed and sputtered, but came online. We're going to do something incredibly stupid instead. Why does that not surprise me? Deho flew the Chionsa out of the cave at full speed, heading straight for the Kethron ships. Their sensors picked up the small vessel immediately. They opened fire. But Deho wasn't trying to fight or escape. He was heading for the largest asteroid in the field. A massive rock, 3 times the size of the Kethron ships. What are you doing? Yura asked. Creating a distraction. Deho armed the ship's mining lasers and fired at the asteroid's surface. The lasers cut deep. Hitting the asteroid's unstable core, the asteroid exploded. Massive chunks of rock flew in all directions. The Kethron ships scrambled to avoid the debris. One ship was hit and damaged. Another was forced off course. In the chaos, the Chionsa slipped away, jumping to hyperspace before the Kethrons could react. In the quiet after the jump, Yura stared at Deho. You destroyed an entire asteroid to escape. It was already unstable. I just helped it along. Deho checked their course. We're heading to Nexus Prime, but we'll arrive barely. The fuel will last just long enough. Yura shook her head in disbelief. Insane, brilliant, terrifying, all at the same time. That's the human way. They settled into the journey's final week. The ship limped along, held together by Deho's repairs and sheer luck. During the long, quiet hours, Deho and Yura talked more about their fears, their hopes, their dreams. Deho told her about his past. How he had owned a successful engineering company on Earth. How his business partner had betrayed him, stolen his designs, and left him with nothing. How he had fled to Hayun Station to escape the memories. Yura told him about the pressure of being a princess. About an empire that expected her to be perfect. About feeling trapped by tradition and duty. About wanting to make real change, but not knowing how. You are making change now, Deho said. Those documents you carry could prevent a war. If we reach the council, Yura replied. If they believe me. If the Kethrons do not silence me first. We'll make it, I promise. Yura looked at him with soft eyes. Do not make promises you cannot keep, Deho. I always keep my promises. It's a human thing. On the last night before reaching Nexus Prime, they sat together in the common area. The ship's lights were dimmed. Outside the window, the stars of normal space slowly appeared as they prepared to drop from hyperspace. Deho, Yura said quietly. When this is over, when I have delivered the documents and completed my mission, what will you do? I don't know. I can't go back to Hayun Station. The Kethrons probably destroyed it looking for us. He smiled sadly. Guess I'll find another workshop somewhere. Start over again. You could come with me, to the Dravalian Empire. Deho's heart jumped. What? You have proven yourself worthy. More than worthy. My people need engineers like you. Thinkers who can see beyond tradition. Yura took his hand. And I need you. Wake, too. Yura, I'm human. Your people think we're primitive. My people are wrong. You have shown me that. When two souls recognize each other as equals, as partners, they exchange marks. It is a promise. A commitment. Like marriage? Similar, but deeper. It binds our fates together for life. Deho should have been scared. This was happening so fast. But looking into Yura's eyes, he felt only certainty. They had been through so much together. They had saved each other's lives. They had learned from each other. They had become partners in every way that mattered. Yes, he said simply. Yura smiled, a beautiful smile that made her whole face light up. She touched his forehead with hers, a gentle gesture. Her scales glowed softly. Then we are bonded, Kang Deho. Your fate is mine. My fate is yours. Until the stars go dark. Until the stars go dark. Deho repeated. They kissed. And in that moment, the human engineer and the dragon princess became something more. Something new. A bridge between two worlds. The next morning, the Chionsa dropped out of hyperspace at Nexus Prime. The planet gleamed below them. A world of silver cities and golden towers. Home of the Galactic Council. We made it, Deho said, hardly believing it. We did. Yura squeezed his hand. Together, as they descended toward the planet, both knew the hard part was just beginning. But they also knew they would face it together. That's what partners did. That's what bonded souls did. That's what humans and Dravalians could do, when they chose to. Nexus Prime was like nothing Deho had ever seen. Cities floated in the sky, connected by bridges of pure light. Ships from 100 different species filled the air. The architecture blended every style imaginable, creating something both chaotic and beautiful. The Chionsa landed at the visitor's port, smoking and sparking. Ground crew stared at the battered ship in disbelief. One of them, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms, approached as Deho and Yura disembarked. That ship should not be flying, the crew member said. Tell it that, Deho replied, patting the Chionsa's hull affectionately. She got us here. That's all that matters. Yura was already moving toward the council building, a massive structure at the city's center. Deho hurried to catch up. Despite the bonding ritual, despite everything they had shared, Yura was still a princess on a mission. She walked with purpose and authority, but she also held his hand. That was new. That was important. The council building's entrance was guarded by security from multiple species. They looked at Yura's armor and immediately stood straighter. Dravalians were known throughout the galaxy. Respected. Feared. Crown Princess Yura, one guard said, bowing. We believed you were dead. The reports said your ship was destroyed. The reports were wrong, Yura said simply. I need to address the council immediately. I carry evidence of Kethran war crimes. The guard hesitated. The council is in session, but they are discussing trade agreements. They do not wish to be disturbed. They will wish to hear this. Yura's voice turned cold and commanding. Tell them the Crown Princess of the Dravalian Empire demands an audience. Now. Affer. The guard hurried away. Another guard looked at Deho with suspicion. And who is this human? Ozi? Ozi? This is Kang Deho, Yura said. My bonded partner. He stays with me. The guard's eyes widened. A Dravalian princess bonded to a human? That was unheard of. Scandalous. The guard clearly wanted to object, but didn't dare. Within minutes, they were escorted into the council chamber. It was a circular room, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from dozens of species sat in those seats, all wearing the formal robes of council members. The chamber fell silent when Yura entered. Whispers spread like fire. She was supposed to be dead, and she had a human with her. The scandal was immediate. A tall figure in the highest seat stood. This was the council speaker, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline body. Its voice echoed through the chamber without needing a mouth. Crown Princess Yura. We are relieved to see you alive. Reports indicated your diplomatic mission ended in disaster. It did, Yura said, stepping onto the central platform. Deho stayed close behind her. I was ambushed by Kethran forces while carrying evidence to this council. They killed my guards and destroyed my ships. They intended to kill me and bury the truth. A Kethran representative jumped to his feet. These are lies. The sovereignty would never attack a diplomatic mission. Then explain this. Yura activated her armor's projection system. Holographic images filled the air above the platform. Battle footage. Ships attacking. Soldiers dying. And through it all, clear images of Kethran military vessels and weapons. The chamber erupted in noise. Council members shouted questions. The Kethran representative's face went pale. Yura continued. her voice cutting through the chaos. The evidence is encoded in my armor. Battle recordings. Communication intercepts. Financial records showing Kethran payments to pirate groups, all proving a systematic campaign to destabilize neighboring systems and blame it on others. How did you survive? The speaker asked. How did you reach us? When all your ships were destroyed, Yura turned and looked at Daeho. Because a human engineer found me dying and refused to let me die. Because he repaired my armor when no one else could. Because he helped me escape when Kethran hunters came for me. Because he is proof that humanity deserves a place in this council. Every eye in the chamber turned to Daeho. He felt very small and very human. These were beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, and here he was, a mechanic from a dying world, standing among them. But Yura squeezed his hand, and Daeho remembered who he was, what he had done. He stood straight and looked the council in the eye. Crown Princess Yura honors me, he said. But I only did what any human would do. We help people who need help. We fix things that are broken. We don't give up just because something seems impossible. He paused. Maybe that's what the galaxy needs more of. Or maybe we. The speaker studied him for a long moment. You make a bold claim that humanity deserves council membership. What proof can you offer? Daeho smiled. The proof is standing right here. Princess Yura's armor was destroyed by weapons designed to kill. It was failing. She was dying. Dravalian engineers worked on that armor for decades, using techniques perfected over millennia. I fixed it in 3 days, with human tools and human materials, and I made it better. Murmurs spread through the chamber. A Dravalian representative stood, looking offended. Impossible. Human technology is primitive compared to ours. Then explain why her armor works better now than before, Daeho challenged. Why it's stronger, faster, more efficient. I didn't use fancy ancient techniques. I used human ingenuity. I looked at the problem and found a solution. That's what humans do. Yura stepped forward again. The Kethran sovereignty tried to kill me to hide their crimes. They failed because of human intervention. I move that the council investigate the evidence and sanction the Kethrans. And I move that humanity be granted observer status with a path to full membership. The Kethran representative was shouting denials, but no one was listening. The evidence was too clear. The council speaker called for order, and after hours of debate, votes were taken. The Kethran sovereignty was sanctioned. Their military expansion was halted. War crimes, investigations were opened, and humanity was granted observer status. Daeho couldn't believe it. 1 month ago, he was alone in a workshop on a forgotten station. Now, he was standing in the Galactic Council as humanity's first official representative. After the session ended, Yura and Daeho were approached by dozens of diplomats and officials. Everyone wanted to talk to them. The princess who survived, the human who saved her. Their story was spreading across the galaxy. But through all the attention, one message came that changed everything. A transmission from the Dravalian Empire. From Emperor Taeyang, Yura's father. Return home immediately, the message said. Your presence is required. Yura's face went pale. My father knows about our bonding. Someone must have told him. Is that bad? Very bad. The Dravalian court will never accept a human as my partner. They will demand I renounce the bond or face exile. Daeho felt his heart sink. After everything they had been through, could they be torn apart by politics? What do you want to do? He asked. Yura looked at him with fierce determination. I want to fight. For us. For change. Will you come with me to face my father? Of course. We're bonded, remember? Your fate is mine. 3 weeks later, they arrived at Yonghua, the Dravalian homeworld. The planet was breathtaking. Mountains floated in the sky, held up by ancient technology. Cities of crystal and metal covered the surface, glowing with soft light. Dragons. Real dragons descended from Ura's ancestors, flew through the clouds. The imperial palace sat atop the highest floating mountain. It was built from white stone and blue crystal, beautiful and imposing. Guards in ceremonial armor lined the approach. Daeho had never been so nervous in his life. Meeting an alien emperor was definitely not in his usual job description. Emperor Taeyang was a large Dravalian male with silver scales and golden horns. He sat on a throne of crystal, wearing robes that seemed to be made of liquid light. His golden eyes studied Daeho with intense scrutiny. "So this is the human my daughter has bonded with," the emperor said. His voice was deep and powerful. "The one who dares to claim partnership with Dravalian royalty." "Father," Yura began. The emperor raised a hand, silencing her. "I will hear from the human first. Kang Daeho, explain yourself. Why should I accept this bond? Why should I allow my daughter to tie herself to a species barely out of its home system?" Daeho took a breath. This was it. Make or break. "Your Majesty, I don't have royal blood. I'm not a warrior or a diplomat. I'm just an engineer. But I saved your daughter's life 3 times. I helped her complete her mission." The court gasped. Declaring love so openly was not done in Dravalian culture. But Daeho continued. "You're right to be suspicious of humans. We're young. We make mistakes. We're messy and chaotic, and we do things that don't make sense to older species." He looked the emperor in the eye. "But we also never give up. We adapt. We survive. We help others survive. And maybe that's what the Dravalian Empire needs." "You presume to tell me what my empire needs?" The emperor's voice was dangerous. "I presume to tell you what I saw," Daeho said firmly. "Your people are amazing. Your technology is incredible. Your culture is thousands of years old. But it's also stagnant. When was the last time a Dravalian invented something new? When was the last time you adapted to changing times?" The court erupted in outrage. Guards moved forward. But the emperor raised his hand again, stopping them. "Continue," he said quietly. "Your daughter's armor was failing because it used old designs that couldn't handle new weapons. I fixed it using human materials and human techniques. I made ancient Dravalian technology better by combining it with young human innovation." Daeho stepped forward. "That's what Yura and I represent. Old and new, working together. Tradition and innovation. Don't you see? We're stronger together than apart." Silence filled the throne room. The emperor stared at Daeho for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. A deep, genuine laugh. "You have courage, human. Foolish courage, perhaps, but courage nonetheless." The emperor stood. "You claim you made my daughter's armor better?" "Yes, your majesty." "Prove it." The emperor led them to the imperial workshop, a massive facility filled with ancient technology and master craftsmen. There, sitting in a place of honor, was a battleship. The same ship Yura's great-grandmother had commanded 500 years ago. It had been broken for centuries, and no one could fix it. "Dravalian engineers have tried to repair this ship for generations," the emperor said. "If you can succeed where they failed, I will accept your bond with my daughter. If you fail, you will leave Yonghua and never return. Do you accept this challenge?" Daeho looked at the massive ship. It would be the hardest work of his life. But when he looked at Yura, saw the hope in her eyes, he knew he had no choice. "I accept," he said. Daeho spent 2 weeks working on the ship. He barely slept, barely ate. He studied Dravalian technology, learned their techniques, and combined them with human engineering. The Dravalian master craftsman watched with skepticism that slowly turned to respect. He didn't just repair the ship, he revolutionized it, added human AI systems, installed modular components for easy repairs, increased power efficiency by 300%, and he found the original problem. A simple design flaw that everyone had missed because they were too focused on complex solutions. When the ship powered up successfully for the first time in 5 centuries, the entire workshop erupted in cheers. Emperor Taeyang arrived to see the ship himself. He walked through it, examining every system, every repair. Finally, he turned to Daeho. "You have done what generations of my best engineers could not do. You have proven your worth." The Emperor placed a hand on Daeho's shoulder. "I grant you the title of Royal Consort Engineer. I accept your bond with my daughter. And I declare a new era for the Dravalian Empire, one of cooperation and innovation." Yura threw her arms around Daeho, laughing and crying at the same time. They had won. The wedding was a grand ceremony that combined human and Dravalian traditions. Representatives from across the galaxy attended, including delegates from Earth who couldn't quite believe what was happening. Daeho wore formal clothes with Dravalian ceremonial elements. Yura wore her repaired armor, polished until it shone like stars. When they exchanged vows, it was broadcast across the galaxy, a message of hope and unity. 5 years passed. Yura ruled as Empress now, her father having abdicated peacefully. She led the Dravalian Empire into a renaissance of technology and culture. Human engineers worked alongside Dravalian craftsmen, creating wonders. Daeho served as her chief advisor and led humanity's delegation to the Galactic Council, which had granted full membership. He also maintained a workshop on Yonghua, where he taught both human and Dravalian students. And they had a daughter, Hana. She was a miracle, carrying genetics from both species. She had her mother's scales and her father's stubbornness. She was the future made real. One evening, Daeho stood with Yura on their balcony, watching the sunset over Yonghua's capital. Hana played with a toy robot Daeho had built, making it dance. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Yura asked. Daeho thought about the lonely workshop on Heiyun Station, about fixing broken machines in isolation, about having no purpose beyond survival. "Not even for a second," he said. Yura smiled and leaned against him. "We fixed each other." Below them, the city glowed with light. Human-designed buildings stood next to traditional Dravalian towers. Ships, from 100 worlds, came and went. And in the sky above, dragons flew alongside human spacecraft. A new era had begun. An era where different species didn't just coexist but thrived together. Where humanity's determination and ingenuity had earned them a place among the stars. And it all started because one stubborn human engineer refused to let an injured princess die. Because that's what humans did. They helped. They fixed things. They never gave up. And sometimes, they changed the fate of the entire galaxy.